Thanks for joining me on the Peace in Parenting podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
The pursuit of perfect parenting is actually harming your kids. Because if you are in the pursuit of being the perfect parent, you also are in the pursuit of having perfectly behaved children, because how can you have perfection of parenting if you don't have perfectly behaved children? And if you have perfectly behaved children, does that pursuit lead you to sacrifice the relationship that you actually have with your children in order to fulfill your own desire of being perfect? And does a child need a perfect parent? No child needs a perfect parent who does everything perfectly and who has perfection in mind. No child can live up to that expectation either, because if you expect that of yourself, you also subconsciously expect that of your children. And if your child can't live up to those expectations, then how do they feel? How do you feel? How does parenting feel? It will lead a child to believe that they need to be perfect, that everything needs to be perfect. And what does that do to their frustration levels? I ended up being that parent because I lived deeply in the idea of perfection, because perfection somehow would have validated me as a mom. And so I gravitated towards perfection in order to validate myself. But I ended up using threats and bribes and yelling because I needed my children to behave. Because how could I be the perfect parent if I didn't have perfectly behaved children? And guess what? I didn't have perfectly behaved children. And because that doesn't exist, I had to do whatever I could to get perfectly behaved children, or at least strive to and try to. And in the end, during this whole idea of trying to attain perfection, I ended up manipulating my kids into being perfect because it was the only way that I could try to have perfect children. The threats, the bribes, the yelling, the manipulations, the taking things, the giving things, the rewards, the charts, all of it came out of this desire for behavior, because I thought behavior was the thing I needed to validate me as a perfect parent. So if Esme wouldn't brush her teeth, I would bribe her with a show. If you brush your teeth, you can watch a television show. Well, did she brush her teeth? Most of the time, until she didn't. But it made me feel good, like, oh, I achieved it. If Pia refused to do what I asked her, I threatened her with a timeout. And so she would go to timeout, but then she would do the thing that I asked her because she wanted to please me, because she cared about our relationship, obviously way more than I cared about our relationship. And so went our days, the timing out, the threatening, the bribing. And when those didn't work, when the punishments and the bribes and the threats didn't work, I yelled because I got so frustrated. And I knew if I yelled, it might, some of the time, scare them into complying, because I couldn't have a child who didn't comply. Because what kind of mother would I have been? Would I have been the perfect mother? Would I have been fulfilling this idea inside of my own head that I needed to be the perfect mother? And where did that come from for me? It came from this achievement place, from my own childhood, that I needed to do everything perfectly, because in my home, mistakes were chastised. They were punished. They were pointed out. They were corrected. They were not accepted. So not only did I need the perfectly behaved child, I also had to have the perfect meals, the perfect play dates, the perfect holidays, the amazing birthday parties. And I needed those all, plus the behaving children, to fulfill my sick and twisted idea of motherhood and what it meant to be a mother. I never looked at the right things. I didn't look at the relationship. But I knew it. I knew it deep in my heart. I would go to bed feeling like a complete failure. I didn't know what to do, though. I didn't know how to get out of my cycle. I didn't know how to get out of my mindset. And guess what? None of this had anything to do with the way my children behaved, because they were just behaving like children. It all had to do with my mindset and my upbringing and my subconscious and the unmet needs I had in my own system. And that's where parenting becomes so convoluted and difficult, is because our childhood plays such a large role in all of it. And our unmet needs come roaring to the forefront, and we don't know how to manage them. And then they start to manifest in ways that are very sneaky if you're not careful about looking at them. So I went to bed exhausted and debilitated, and I felt terrible about yelling or about sending my child to timeout or about threatening them. And our relationship was suffering. Our relationships were suffering. They were suffering. I was suffering. And it all had to end, but it couldn't end without my realization. It couldn't end without an awakening by me. So when I found connected parenting and I knew I could do things differently, and the mindset shift and the ideology shifted, then I was able to start to really examine my perfectionism, and that my perfectionism was actually sacrificing the relationship I shared with my child in order to achieve behavior, which is all this old school, traditional, conventional parenting ideology is all based on the behavior and the patriarchy and the control. We have to be controlled. We have to control our children. We have to have everything look good and look as if it's perfect. So once I found connected parenting, that all shattered for me in moments. In just my first meeting with my coach, it all just shattered. I was flabbergasted. What do you mean I don't have to make them behave? What do you mean I can just lean into connection? What do you mean? I can do these things and still have a good relationship with my kids and still have kids who are going to grow up not to be, crazy barbarians running wild across this, country. Yes, you can. Because you don't need the control. You don't need the perfection. You don't need that old mindset. You need to trust in your child, and that the relationship is the most important thing, not the behavior. And when we flip the script like that and place the behavior in the bottom, right, in the less important place, and we place the relationship in the most important place, guess what? Most of the behavior comes. But even if it doesn't, we haven't failed, because behavior is not the goal. Relationship is. It is the goal of everything in connected parenting. It should be the goal in all of our relationships and all of our unions, is that the actual goodness and vitality of the relationship is the most important thing in our lives. So here are some mindsets that really have helped me. 4 of them. One is perfection is unattainable, and it is not our goal. You are not going to feel better, do better, or be a better parent if you are perfect. And it's not attainable. So you can constantly work to seek perfection and achieve perfection, but you will never, ever get there. And what a terrible path to set yourself on, that you can never achieve your goal. So if you can let go of that being your goal, then you can begin to let go of all of the things attached to it. Number 2, relationships and connection are our goals in parenting. We want to have long-lasting relationships with the most precious people in our life. You can tell when your relationship feels good with your little person, right? You can tell when things are humming along. You can tell when they really want to be around you and connected to you and you're vibing. We want that vibe. We want that connection to exist as much as we possibly can. It won't all the time. There will be moments of off-track behaviors and kids who say crazy things, and we say crazy things, and we embrace our imperfection and we embrace their imperfections. But all in all, we focus on relationship and connection. Those are our goals, not perfection. Number 3, being perfect breeds perfectionists. So if you are perfect and you are constantly operating in a world of wanting everything to be perfect without even saying it, your children understand that. They understand that you're trying to be perfect. They understand that you are pushing everyone to do more and be more and act better. And when they feel that pressure, they might begin to put that pressure on themselves to be perfectionists, where they'll have low frustration tolerance, where they will believe that everything has to be a certain way. And that can be a very frustrating place for kids. And then it's very frustrating to watch your kids be in that mindset. But oftentimes, and not always, but oftentimes that mindset comes from us. Now, some kids are wired to, want to do things right, but we can either help that or hinder that. Number 4, parenting just good enough is just good enough. And having just good enough kids is totally good enough. We're never, ever going to be better than that. And that's okay. That's what we want. We don't want everything to be perfect. We don't want everything to be a certain way. We want to be flexible and malleable and know that there's going to be pitfalls and understand that and really walk through that with grace. And that good enough parenting is the goal because it's attainable and achievable. And we can get there with good enough parenting. We really can. So adjusting your view on that can really help you lean into parenting and feel more satisfied in it. Because if you're trying to achieve perfectionism, you'll never be satisfied. But if you're trying to achieve just good enough, then you don't have to beat yourself up. You've achieved it. Good enough is good enough. If you're listening to this podcast or you're working on this work, I know you're doing way more than most people do. So don't stress yourself out that you need to make it all look and feel perfect. If you want to know more about perfect parenting or how it looks or how it looked for me, my book Unpunished is all about my journey in perfectionism. And there's lots of good stories in there. Plus, I give you a lot of ideas around connective parenting. So if you're interested in that story or the idea of perfectionism or the idea of connection, my book could be just for you. It's called Unpunished, and you can find it at unpunishedbook.com. I hope you grab a copy. Thanks for joining us today, and I will see you next time.